It's time to go inside the mega events with some of the biggest names in the trillion-dollar world of sports. Let's go beyond the scoreboard with the sports professor, Rick Horrow.
I'm the sports professor, Rick Horrow. Welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, Inside the Mega Events. It's a trillion-dollar sports business, to be sure, and about 50 to 60% of those dollars are wrapped up in the mega events, the championships, Super Bowls, All-Star Games, World Series, Wimbledon, tennis majors, golf majors, NASCAR championships, IndyCar championships, Ryder Cup. All of those too numerous to mention. I'm in my office to kick off the show, but I'm not here a lot. I'll be on the road on a weekly basis to bring you the inside tips from those major events. The balance sheets, who wins, who loses, the interviews, how you put on the events, and how you sustain them. This is all brought to you by Edelman Financial.
Money doesn't come with instructions. That's why we created Edelman Financial Services to help you with everything from college and retirement planning to managing your investments, helping you achieve retirement security. We're among the nation's top financial advisors. Come see how we can help you.
Sports professor Rick Horrow, a little bit of the Louisiana Superdome, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, national championship game. The Tigers, we've heard that all over New Orleans, will win. Who will really win is New Orleans' $100 and some odd million of economic impact. The verification that this is in fact a special events town. The pretenders who also put on events don't put it on as well as these guys do. South Florida is big, but this is also even bigger. And when you think about the two undefeated teams, everybody wins no matter what. Who else wins? Television, streaming, corporate sponsorships, Mercedes-Benz, a whole host of people. The bottom line is college football wins. They've got a turbulent year. They've got pay-for-play coming up. They've got eligibility coming up. They've got governance coming up. They've got endorsement and likeness issues coming up. All of those don't happen overnight, but a good national championship game provides needed momentum as they go into 2020. Sports professor Rick Horrow, spotlight on the national championship. Well, the national championship game came and went, and with it, Clemson's title hopes, but also 80 to 90% of the action was on LSU, the 6-point favorite, easily covered. LSU $200,000 bets, a couple of them came into Las Vegas Sportsbook, and William Hill said that the Clemson-LSU game was on pace to be the biggest bet college football game of all time. Jeff Davis of Caesars Sportsbook said the last championship game that had this kind of one-sided action was the Super Bowl between the Seahawks and the Broncos, where the underdog Seahawks beat the Broncos 43-8, and Nevada Sportsbooks won about $20 million, the most ever bet on a Super Bowl. And now the college football offseason begins. 2/3 of Americans support college players being allowed to earn money through endorsements, according to a new poll from Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs. How quickly those rules will come is one big issue. In the legal department, Overtime and Ohio State have a battle over the O. New York-based sports network Overtime filed a suit in federal court last Monday in a trademark dispute with Ohio State University over the letter O. Numerous O marks, O formative marks, and O designs in use by third parties, and some say it's not fair that there is a limit here. At least that's what the lawsuit says. One party not yet trying to trademark an O, LSU's colorful coach O, Ed Orgeron. That might just change after the national championship, but clearly off-season begins. But not really for a lot of football. Look at the XFL. Vince McMahon's XFL signed a multi-year deal with Junior Sports designed to protect the fledgling football league from improper sports betting. Long been the most bet on U.S. sport, and Genius has similar partnerships with golf's PGA Tour and soccer's English Premier League, and according to the Nevada Gaming Control Board, football accounts for about 34% of all sports betting in the state, a number that will only increase. Super Bowl ahead, but then the XFL. Appropriate and important to have everybody listen to the interview we did with friend and Sport Business Handbook contributor Oliver Luck, who's been talking about the XFL. Yes, he's commissioner, but he also was involved in the Houston Dynamo soccer team, involved in NFL Europe, athletic director at West Virginia University, and part of the NCAA's governance structure before he left to go to the XFL. clearly his perspective on a lot of sports, important as we turn the page on the 2020 college football season. Here is Oliver Luck.
Incredibly proud, a long and illustrious career. It's Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck, the commissioner of the XFL, and I'm certainly not cynical about it. Don't mean to minimize it. You take a look at some of the information. I'm serious about it. This is a league that's on the way to success, largely because of Oliver's even temperament. Certainly need capital, but his bridge building skills as well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we are here attracting a great crowd, and everybody thought that everybody was lined up for Oliver Luck's autograph, by the way. No, two things. One is they think they're getting Andrew's autograph, and he's not here. Andrew Luck, his kid. And then second is Miami Super Bowl 2020 is pounding coconuts in the background, and we have a line there. So
I can do Andrew's autograph, though, if people want to, if they really want that.
I'm pretty sure.
So they won't go home empty-handed.
By the way, you are probably the only one who could really get away with that.
Yeah. Well, my wife won't let me do it, though. No, she frowns on that sort of behavior.
I'm pretty sure. Nor will he.
Yeah.
So the morning of June 4th, June 5, whatever it is, 2018, clearly life-changing for you for a lot of reasons. Vince and you had a lot of conversations before that, but that was your announcement. So give me your mindset as to why you did it and how you feel now.
Sure. So I was working at the NCAA, as you know, EVP of Regulatory Affairs, basically a number two to Mark Emmert, whom I really appreciate. He has a hard job. It's tough running college athletics. And I was aware that Vince had made an announcement last January that the league was going to be relaunched, but I didn't really pay much attention to it, quite honestly. So one of his guys reached out and said, "Hey, would you take a meeting with Vince?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't know him, I had never met him. I was sort of impressed with his entrepreneurial bent in building up WWE into a, publicly traded $billion-a-year company. It's remarkable.
So he reached out to you?
He reached out to me out of thin air, and I ran NFL Europe, so it's a pretty select group, that's run professional football leagues and started them from scratch, right? So anyway, I sat with him, and over the course of a couple of days, and I wanted to really understand why he wanted to do this, and would he do it, as the Brits would say, in a proper fashion, right? Because the first time around wasn't good. Football wasn't good. It was gimmicky, and I wouldn't want to be part of a bad football league with lots of gimmicks. I don't think the American public likes gimmicks, right? Particularly when it comes to something important like football.
Yeah, football, right.
So he convinced me that he was going to hire somebody that knew football and could build that league the way it should be built. And everything I've experienced in the last 6-7 months as I've been on board has been just that. He's given me all the rope I need, as they say, to hang myself.
Presumption of, and you're not, presumption of the he hate me days, and now you have until early 2020 to prove that wrong in 8 cities. His comment, or yours, about reimagining football, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so what he wants is a up-tempo game, right? Fewer stoppages, fewer breaks, right? The college and pro ball sometimes can go on forever, right?
Well, there's a good reason. They're commercials.
Well, that's true. That's true. But think of all the split screen that's now taking place, right? So up-tempo game. He wants to be innovative in what we do, right? So shorter breaks, so and get it all done in 3 hours. I remember back in the old days, the 1970s or the 80s or the 90s, when games really got done under 3 hours.
Right.
So I think the talent pool of players and coaches is pretty deep, pretty rich, pretty broad. And I think we can find guys that are able to deliver on that promise, right? So we've got very soon we'll be announcing our broadcast partners. We have 4 games a weekend, right? Eight teams, 4 games a weekend. All those games will be broadcast, every last one, either terrestrially or fully distributed cable. So we're going to have
multiple partners.
We're going to have some great broadcast deals. We're not far from naming our head coaches, right? I've got 4 signed and 4 more to come because I'm acting like the owner of each one of these teams, right? Really? Because Vince owns them,
and it's not as if you're not experienced doing it.
Yeah, I hired coaches over in Europe, right. Multiple times, right, with our league. So it's coming together. We have the gift of time. I wouldn't have taken this job, Rick. Vince said, "You got 3 months, and we got to play." I said, "Nope, don't want it." You need time. You need time in any startup.
Part of it, any startup.
Any startup.
But part of it is the nuts and bolts of the widgets and everything you need to do, stadiums, all. And part of it is the reimagining the reimagining.
That's right.
Basically.
That's right. So we've taken all these ideas. We have a different kickoff we're looking at. We have a different punt we're looking at. We're looking at a 25-second clock versus the 40-second clock. We're looking at a different overtime, right? We're looking at having an 8th referee.
Yeah.
What a novel idea, you know. That
it's a replay?
Yeah, exactly. So all that stuff. But you have to test it as well, you know. And so we're testing it already with junior colleges back in December of this past year. We're working with the Spring League. Might be familiar to you, the Your Call Football League.
Right.
These are all, you know, we basically borrow these leagues' players for 3-4 days and run 55 of our new kickoffs to make sure we've got it right, and punts and all that kind of stuff. I've always found it interesting. My dad was a chemical engineer, and he used to preach about the importance of R&D to DuPont, where he worked. Think about the NFL, $14-15 billion a year company. There's not much R&D going on, right? You know, or college football, right? Very popular, but not much R&D going. So we want to make sure we test these things as best we can before we, etch them in our rule book.
Right. But the other piece of it is to develop a consensus as meaningful partners. The one thing I noticed about your release was how glowing Mark Emmert was, and it didn't look like a normal comment. To me, it looked like something that was a friend that really wanted to send you off on the right foot. And the same thing, I assume, with Roger Goodell. You told me a story, but tell it in your own way. But so how do you feel like you have the ability to bridge build?
Well, I think everybody in the football business should be rooting for everybody else in the football business, right? In theory, right? I think that a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that we're at a high water mark in terms of football. The NFL is extraordinarily popular, as is, major college ball and even small college ball. So I think there's, plenty of room for everybody to sort of play in this space, right? But I think it's important to have good relationships with the National Football League, or, good relationships with major college football. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I've always believed that. And that's appropriate. So, relationships with Roger or Mark or other folks, to me, they're important. Not just from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint.
Well, here's my take on that. You've used, and I mean this with respect, you've used 3 really good sayings the last 2 minutes that catch my fly. And you got 3, and I'm sure you used everything. But the bottom line is that University of West Virginia, World League of American Football, Houston Dynamo, NCAA, bridge building means chops to be able to walk into a room and say, I've done it, I'm doing it. And so that, to me, is a missing link that other people may not have had.
Well, I guess there's a select group of people that have actually started football leagues and run them,
on one hand.
Or even started, a franchise like the Dynamo, right? It was the old San Jose Earthquake coming down to Houston, et cetera. So, it's a select few, right? So I feel like you've done it before and you have confidence in your experience, all right, to handle it again.
How do you feel about your PR person eating while you're doing it?
I feel great if she'd give me a little bite or save something for me.
No, you don't have time.
That's right. We don't have time. That's right. Yeah.
No problem. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the hardest working guy. I used to say in college sports and television, whatever it is, but now you're the hardest working guy in your amalgamation of future success. Talk about let's do the cynical and let's do the cynical and get it out of the way for a minute. You got 4 leagues who are, not this year, but next year and the next couple of years. The NFL has gone from WFL to USFL to kind of a free time to at least was yours. Now you got 4, and the uninformed would say, including one that starts tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah.
The uninformed would say, what gives you the reason? You've had the presumption of failure. Tell us why this is.
Sure. It's really just a couple things. Capital, money matters, right? Any startup, and Vince is putting a minimum of $500 million behind this venture. Time, which we have, and the ability to plan. Very powerful partners, which we'll be announcing very soon. And I think the other thing is this: disciplined decision making. So, think about the USFL. I remember going to Houston Gambler games. The place was rocking, right? The old Astrodome. Jerry Argovitz. If they had stayed in the spring, had disciplined decision making, that would be a very valuable property today. But they didn't. Right? They made.
Talk about Donald Trump.
No, we shouldn't. But they moved to the fall. That was a bad decision. Lack of decision-making discipline. But that's the vision we have, right? So you build. But Lamar Hunt was very interested in NFL Europe when I was running the league.
Right.
And Lamar used to say to me, Oliver, you always have to remember who you are, but more importantly, who you're not. So we have to remember who we're not. We're not the National Football League and never will be, right? But we can be the XFL and build our league in the spring, mind our own business, if you will, have good relations with everybody, right, in the football world, because I think it's all important. But I think we can build up brands that people kind of like and watch and follow.
Shift gears a few minutes. Is college football heading in the right direction? You've been there not only at the governing level, ladies and gentlemen, in Indy, but you were there running University of West Virginia, and you had some notoriety on the field there too. So obviously you had some perspective. Is it moving in the right direction?
I think it is. I think it's in a pretty healthy spot. I think that by and large, it's good. Listen, it better be going in the right direction because the revenue from college football is paying for the swim team and the lacrosse, and people always forget it. But it carries your athletic department. Same thing for men's basketball, right? For the schools not there with a revenue producing football team. So I think the governance of football is actually pretty good. I'm opposed to paying players. That question always comes up, because I think that
paying in quotes, where the quotes.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that you can provide some additional benefits for players. Why not have a scholarship include grad school?
Right.
Why not have the scholarship include a year abroad if you want to spend time, overseas as part of your education, right? Why not, 3 or 4 years of insurance after school?
My unsolicited comment that I've shared with guys like Joe Castiglione and others is that your game, the XFL, is a loss on the governance committee's structure. There's so many things that
is Joe? No question. Yeah. Is Joe not the best AD in the world? Hiring Bob Stoops with that great run, and then hiring Lincoln Riley. Is that not?
Well,
Joe is the most.
By the way, we'll do it in a minute. We're promoting. We have a book. We'll do it much more time. He's one of our chapter writers.
Yeah.
And we picked only the best, which is one of the reasons why you're there. But the bottom line is that Joe is one of the best linear thinkers as well. So, God bless college football for surrounding themselves with the right people, because you hear playoffs and these 4 teams deserved it this year, so they're fine. What about next year? You don't make decisions. So the other question about looking back, here's a West Virginia guy who went to Texas Law School, did the Big 12 deal with West Virginia in the Big 12. If you had it to do over again today, would you do it?
I would.
Really?
West Virginia culturally is much like the Big 12, and I say that in this sense, right? Appalachia goes all the way out to include Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma State and University of Oklahoma are very much like WVU. It includes places like Kansas State and Kansas and Iowa State, right? I mean, actually we have more in common with the Big 12 schools than we did with our old Big East companions. Syracuse had nothing in common with WVU. Seriously. Georgetown had very little in common with WVU, but Oklahoma State does. Texas Tech does, right? So I really think it's culturally a very good fit, even though the geography is a little bit odd, right? But, it's culturally a very good fit for the Mountaineers.
Well, it's as odd as Rutgers being in the West, or it's as odd as everything else is. So that's clearly not the dimension.
That's right.
And if that's going in the right direction, then, so what about MLS? And then we'll
I'm a huge fan of what Don Garber has done. If you go back and look at where they were when he took that job in, 2000 maybe, where they are today, it's incredible. The value of the franchises, the quality of the league. It's got ways to go still. It's still got to figure out how to break that TV question, right? It's not destination viewing for the vast majority of people, and that's a challenge. NFL is, and XFL hopes to be destination viewing, but MLS has to kind of increase the opportunity for the TV broadcast and expand their audience.
What does it feel like when people stop you on the street and say, how's Andrew? Can you get me to Andrew?
No, they say, tell Andrew I got him on my fantasy team, so he needs to throw a bunch. I say, you think he cares about that? I really. No, that's the question. That's the question I get.
Yeah,
I said, hey, I'm great. Good job, but I'm not going to.
Ladies and gentlemen, in that context, and by the way, he is one of our contributors to the Sport Business Handbook. You hear a lot more about it, but key people in the industry, Paul Tagliabue's in there, Steve Russ in there, and on and on and on. So it's as good as it gets. Andrew Luck. Oliver Luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
I appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure.
Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.